I have a 2000 Pontiac Bonneville, and it has a broken coil spring on the front strut. And you can see here the end of the broken coil has come off the plate and is coming close to puncturing the tire. I'm going to remove the strut assembly and replace it with an entire new assembly. I ordered the new struts and it'll take several days for them to get here, so I've been coming out here several times a day and spraying all the bolts with a penetrating oil. There are two brackets on the top of the strut that you'll have to remove. One is for the brake line and the other one is for the ABS sensor. Next, loosen the nuts on the bottom of the strut mount, and this takes a 24mm socket. When removing the bolts from the lower end of the strut, do not turn the bolt head. The bolts have these serrated grooves, and the reason for these are to be pressed into this aluminum knuckle. If you turn the bolt head, these grooves will damage the inside of this knuckle and it will no longer be able to be pressed into place. So only pound the bolt straight out. Before you pound on the bolts, always wear safety glasses. These bolts are usually seized up within this aluminum knuckle, so you have to pound them out, but you don't want to pound directly on the end of the bolt because you could damage it. So unscrew the nuts just till they're flush with the end, and then you can pound on those. The bolts have some serrated grooves in them, and once you've pounded them out past that, then they should tap out fairly easily. On the top of the strut assembly there are 3 bolts, 2 in the front and 1 behind this rubber seal, and they require a 15mm socket to remove. I would remove the rear one first so that you can hold on to the strut assembly while you remove the last one. With the strut assembly out, I'm going to compare it to the new one and make sure they're the same. On the new strut assembly, the coil spring is compressed and is under a lot of pressure. On the old one, since the coil is broken, all the tension has been removed from the spring. You never want to remove a coil spring from a strut without using the proper tools to first compress the spring. And never remove this nut without first compressing the spring. The new strut assembly did not come with this little boot that covers the nut. This keeps dust and moisture out, so just remove it from the old one and push it onto the new one. On the new strut, there are two extruded holes, and these are where the ABS sensor bracket goes and the brake line bracket. These holes are not threaded like in the original, and the reason is because self-tapping screws go in there and they cut their own threads as you tighten them. I recommend that you clean all the threads on the bolts with a wire brush to remove any rust and dirt before you put it back together. The first thing I'm going to do is remove the bolts from the top of the new strut. The top of the strut has two plastic locators that are used to line up the strut in the top of the vehicle. Those two locators will go in this hole and the one in the back behind the rubber seal. With the top bolted in, you can see the two plastic pins used to line up the top of the strut. The strut mount to body bolt should be tightened to 35 foot-pounds. Next, line up the hole in the strut with the lower hole in the knuckle on the control arm. You may have to use a punch to get the holes to line up. Before replacing the lower strut bolts, you should coat them with an anti-seize to prevent them from fusing to the aluminum knuckle. Insert the bolt and tap it into place until you see thread sticking out. Now I'll put the first nut on there. Push the knuckle in and line up the hole for the top bolt. As you tighten the nut, it'll pull the bolt in and the serrated grooves will lock it in place. The strut to knuckle gets tightened to 135 foot-pounds. Next, replace the ABS bracket. Since these screws are self-tapping, you may have to put some force on them to get them started. And then do the same with the brake line bracket. Both of these brackets are tightened to 13 foot-pounds. Tighten the lug nuts to 100 foot-pounds. I like to tighten them in a crisscross pattern to avoid distorting the rim.